Imagine that terrorism was not just a problem for politicians, soldiers, and security services, but above all a mirror of our own inner selves. That every hateful thought, every anger and feeling of injustice that we carry within us becomes a tiny stone in the mosaic of global violence. In this post, I want to share some deep, personal, and spiritual thoughts on why it is becoming increasingly difficult to fight terrorism, and why the real fight does not begin on the battlefield, but in our hearts. I will begin with a quiet confession. The question of why it is becoming increasingly difficult to combat terrorism does not only come to mind when I hear news of attacks or threats. It also came to mind when I looked inside myself and saw shadows that frightened me more than any external danger. Terrorism did not seem to me to be just a political, military, or social problem, but above all a reflection of the state of the human soul. And because each of us is a drop in the ocean, I know that whatever I carry within me contributes to the collective consciousness. Once I was lying in bed with a high fever. It was a time when I was struggling with many inner battles. I felt wronged, betrayed, persecuted by injustice. Anger reigned within me, and it could not be calmed. Only when I began to pray in my fever, asking to be freed from the need to blame others, did a change occur. The heat subsided, my breathing slowed, my body relaxed. At that moment, I understood that the illness was a reflection of my inner aggression. In the same way that anger can destroy an individual's body, aggression can destroy entire nations. When anger, feelings of injustice, and the desire for revenge combine in thousands and millions of souls, they emerge in the world as terrorism. "Those who live by the sword shall die by the sword," says an old text. I heard these words as a child, but I only felt their full weight when I realized that even a thought is a sword. The idea of hatred, the desire for revenge or condemnation. And what else is terrorism but a collective sum of ideas that have maintained the same pattern for generations? Each attack is just the latest link in a chain of ancient injustices, anger, and hurt. When we ask why it is becoming increasingly difficult to fight it, we must ask ourselves, is love growing within us, or is fear increasing? I have noticed that the more I fear, the easier it is for me to be drawn into hatred. Fear whispers to me that the other is dangerous, that I must reject, suppress, and eliminate them. But in doing so, I am strengthening the very energy I am fighting against. It's like trying to extinguish a fire with gasoline. I remember a man I once knew. He lost a child in an attack. His pain was immense. But instead of sinking into hatred, he began to work with inner humility. He said, "If I respond with hatred, I will only continue what killed my child." It was difficult, but I could see in his eyes that his soul had not been destroyed. Such an example teaches me more than hundreds of books, that terrorism cannot be overcome by external force, but only by a change in inner attitude. When I dive deeper, I see that the real question is not how to stop terrorism, but how to stop the terror within ourselves. For within each of us there is a small seed that can grow into either hatred or compassion. If I suppress pain within myself and refuse to transform it into love, I become its prisoner. And then it is no wonder that collective reality is becoming increasingly difficult. Modern physics once gave me an image that became a profound metaphor for me. Everything is energy. Thoughts, feelings, words, all spread as vibrations. If I transmit fear, I contribute to strengthening the frequency on which terrorism is born. If I send out love, even if only to a single being, I change the quality of the entire field. And because consciousness knows no boundaries, the effect of my love can touch even a person who is thousands of kilometers away and is thinking about violence. But here comes the difficulty. Love requires sacrifice of the ego. I must give up the feeling that I am right, that I know who is guilty, that I am the good one and others are bad. It is a temptation that is easy to succumb to. After all, the world seems black and white to us. But in my spiritual depths, I feel that the line between victim and perpetrator is not clear-cut. Who is a terrorist? Someone who was once a victim of hatred, perhaps rejection, humiliation. And now they have become an instrument of the same pain. This brings me to the law of cause and effect. If inner pain is not transformed into love, it becomes the seed of new pain. That is why the fight against terrorism seems more difficult, because it is not enough to change systems, borders, or armies. It is necessary to change human hearts. And changing human hearts is the most difficult task. Once I had an argument with someone close to me. I was angry, I blamed him, I felt that he had betrayed me. A few days later, I fell ill, my body stiffened, and the pain could not be relieved. Only when I admitted to myself, maybe it's me who's wrong. Maybe it's not important who is right, but whether I can love, did the pain subside. And I realized that what happened between me and him on a small scale is the same as what is happening on a global scale. If everyone stands by their own truth and is unable to forgive, wars and attacks will continue. That's why I say, it's not harder to fight terrorism. It's harder to fight your own pride. And yet that is the way. The sacred texts say, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." The meek are not those who allow themselves to be oppressed, but those who have power and yet use it with humility. The more I delve into my inner self, the more clearly I see that the only real power that can overcome violence is purity of heart. Not the power of weapons, but the power of sacrifice and love. Today, when I hear about another attack, I no longer ask, why them? But I ask, what in me must change so that this world is not a breeding ground for hatred? I know that my answer will not change history immediately. But I also know that every thought of love, every act of forgiveness, every moment of humility changes the field of consciousness of all humanity. And if the fight against terrorism seems to be getting harder and harder, it is perhaps because the world is pushing us to realize that external struggle is never enough. Inner transformation is a path that seems difficult, but paradoxically, it is the only path that can truly liberate us. And so, when I look at the world around me today, I understand that the real fight against terrorism does not begin outside, but inside each of us. The more we can transform our own pain, anger, and fear into love, compassion, and humility, the less room there will be for violence in the collective consciousness of humanity. It may seem like a small step, to forgive a single injustice, to change a single thought, to show kindness where it would be easier to be harsh. But it is these small steps that make up the path that can change the world. If we want to defeat terrorism, we must begin by defeating our own pride and hatred. And that is a task that makes sense for each and every one of us. If this reflection resonates with you, I would be grateful if you would support it with a like or share and join us for more videos where we seek a deeper connection between spiritual laws and the reality of our lives.